Hi there, good day y'all. This is Rahul Pateri from the YouTube series of Loss Prevention Maverick. For those who all who know me, thank you very much for being part of this channel. And I'm sorry I'm not uploading as many videos as I would like to. And for the rest who are aspirants to the so-called safety, process safety and all that, I've got 17 years in this major accident hazard business, moved across the various life cycle, still learning as part of my venture to the various modes of safety life cycles. So this video is a request from a friend of mine, very dear senior from my college, who wanted to know just basics about process safety management and in essence how do you know, recall, is there a system where I can remember. So here it goes. So this is the page number 2 and we'll be talking about the Ccps RBPS, it's called RBPS, Romeo Bravo Papa Sierra, risk-based process safety management systems. It has 20 elements, and for those who must have Google learned or at least seen, the common depiction in CCPS is like a house kind of a framework, and in a house we've got the roof, we've got foundation, and we'll have load bearing pillars. For here it's called elements. So the roof is the CCPS based 20 PSMS system, and the foundation to achieve this achieve or rather manage the process safety are, let's for on this is my lingo, foundation. So let's remember 1, 2, 3, 4 foundation blocks. The one is understand hazards, second one is managing risk, third one is learning from lessons, and fourth one is commitment to process safety. We'll come back to these later. So this is page number 3. In page number 2 we were talking about the house framework, the roof being the process safety management system, foundation, and like I said, that's my lingo, foundation, and each of these foundation have pillars, that's the load bearing members, which are called elements. So now how do we remember? We saw 4 foundation blocks, which were understand the hazards, risk, lessons learned, and commitment to process safety. How can we remember? So is there a easy way to remember this? Because one who is aware of it can retrieve it and follow it. So I found, what sort of ticks with me, and everyone have their own kind of the memory placement or memory system. So what goes for me is, now let's consider we are in a hazard workshop, right? So in a hazard workshop, what do? We first go by the guide words of the hazard to understand the hazards. Once we understand the hazards and we know which the risk receptors are, we can estimate the risk, right? And as a part of the hazard, there would be some recommendations. So let's say these recommendations, according to me, is something like some lessons to be learned. And as part of the hazard, once it goes down, all these recommendations or actions need to close out, right? And well, it is a commitment to the person who runs the hazard or the contractor to complete it. So by hazard, we understand the hazards, estimate the risk, recommendations are something like lessons learned, and in order to complete the actions, there is a commitment. So the 4 foundation: understand the hazards, estimate the risk, lessons learned, and commitment to process safety. We'll talk about how we will now remember each of these elements in the next page. Thank you. So on the earlier page number 3, we came across a mnemonic, or not rather a mnemonic, memory process in order to remember the foundation, which is in a hazard, you understand the hazards, you risk rank them, recommendations which can be thought as a lessons learned, and the actions to be closed out is a commitment. So that is how we've learned about that. And now, like we said, in this house structure, these foundations have load bearing members, so called elements. So each of these foundations have respective number of elements. So like which which each is a route to manage the process safety at site. So 2 plus 9 is 11, 4 plus 5 is 9, 11 plus 9, 20 elements. Now how do we remember these 20 elements is what's coming up next. So this is the page after 3, and earlier in number we were about to learn how do we remember those elements. So the elements for each of these foundation blocks, 2 plus 9 plus 4 plus 5, summation 20. So what were the foundation blocks? That is hazard, hazard, understanding the hazards, estimating the risk, also managing the risk, lessons learned, commitment to process safety, right? So now on each of these foundations, so the way it is HP, CTCOO, SAME, AIMM, and our CCPS and a W. So hear me out. So we know hazards, and hazards, high pressure, HP, high pressure is a hazard, correct? So for HP, 2 elements. And the next, for managing the risk, a high pressure, once it comes out, how it is? So that in Hindi we say CT, okay? So that as it comes out, it gives a sound, CT. For those electrical engineers, maybe a current transformer. So HP, high pressure, as the event materializes, there will be a sound, CT. For those who are multilingual or who understand Hindi would know of this. So CT is sound, is a whistling sound. So high pressure, CT, and this sound reaches to the COO of the plant, he looks and says, oh, so the incident is the same like that happened earlier. So H, which is hazard, high pressure is a hazard. As the hazard materializes, CT is a sound which reaches the COO, who identifies that the hazard is similar to what has happened previously. Next foundation is L, so aim. So for lessons, we aim, or the COO, once he identifies, he aims to ensure that it does not happen again. So high pressure gets out, CT reaches the COO, who identifies that it is something that has happened earlier, and let's aim to ensure it does not repeat. C, which is the commitment to process safety. So how can he do this? How can the COO and team aim to ensure it doesn't happen? Following CCPS as the 20 elements. And W, for me, W, I don't know, I'm thinking of the hotel W, but I leave it to my listeners to come up with a way to look at the word W. Maybe weird. I don't know. So high pressure, COO identifies it the same, aims to eliminate these things happening. How do we do that? To start with, CCPS 20 elements, and they have this discussion in hotel W, or so that's how it is. Now we'll move on to see what of these elements are. Thank you. So moving on, we had a mnemonic to understand the foundation and each of the elements. Now let's look at 2 of these foundational blocks and what these elements are, and kind of a little bit in detail. So, so like we said, foundation blocks, understand the hazards, managing the risk. So HP, CT, COO, and the person looks and sees all is the same that has happened. So H is hazard analysis, P, process knowledge management, C, contractor management, T, training and performance assurance, C, conduct to operations, O, operating procedure, operational readiness, safe work practices, asset integrity, MOC, ERP. So how did we qualify this? Is for, we thought of a hazard workshop where we understand the hazards. So here it's pretty much like that. Yeah, in order to do a hazard analysis, we need to have PFDs and PNIDs and layouts and design documents and all that. So those can be considered as a process safety knowledge management. And H is the hazard analysis. So HP, managing risk, is contractor, CT, contractor management. So as a contractor comes on board, the contractor needs to be trained and the performance need to be assured. As part of operations, there is always conduct to operations, and operations can and conduct based on the operating procedure, and operation readiness is nothing like a PSSR. So in the operation readiness, we check whether the operating procedure is up to date, and this once materializes or once this finishes, there is always the permit based system, which is safe work practices, asset integrity, something which is important to manage the risk. There is always management of change, and of course emergency response plan, procedure management, however you want to call it. So hazard analysis, process knowledge management. In order to do a proper hazard analysis, we need inputs, and those are called process knowledge management. Then once a contractor is deployed, needs to be trained and performance assured. In operations part, there is always conduct to operations. Operations can be conducted once we know there is an operating procedure. Operating readiness is kind of a PSSR, which checks and ensures that the operating procedures are available. Once the plant starts operating, there is always safe work practices. Asset integrity management plans have to be ensured. There will always be MOC reviews happening, and emergency response plan, which is essential. So this is the 2 plus 9, the 11 elements of these two foundation blocks, right? Earlier we looked into the foundation blocks, which is hazard analysis and risk management, and had an explanation and what these meant. HP, CTCO, same, AIM, CCPSW. So we said H, hazard analysis, and in order to do the hazard analysis, we need input, so we can call it as process knowledge management. C, a contractor who comes on board needs to be trained, and the operating, we need conduct to operations based on operating procedure. PSSR, which is the operation readiness, checks whether the operating procedures and all are available. Safe work practices, the permit to work system and all that. Asset integrity, management of change, and of course emergency response plan. Now we'll go and see the other 4 and 5 elements out of the lessons learned and commitment to process safety. So let me just take out the sheet. Right. So we had lessons learned and commitment to process safety. So this is the 3rd and the 4th foundation. So over there we said the COO aim to ensure that incidents don't repeat, and that is done using CCPS and all the discussion in the Hotel W. So lessons learned. So aim, audit, incident investigation, measurement and metrics, and management review. So lessons learned, audit, incident investigation, measurement and metrics, and management review. Commitment to process safety is CCPS. A lot we can learn from here itself. Commitment to process safety. So here we've got C, something called as compliance to standards. C is culture. P is process safety competency. S is stakeholder outreach. I had a slip of a tongue here. And W is called workforce involvement. So on the element, or rather, I'm sorry, foundational blocks, lessons learned and commitment to process safety, aim CCPSW. So aim, right? So those who go out to do audits and all that. So so aim. So we've got audits, and audits is kind of an investigation. If I mean, obviously those are different, but in terms of understanding, an audit is kind of an incident investigation, and an audit, there is always some measurements that needs to be done, and there is management review. So audit, I'm sure we all know what an audit is. Incident investigation, the various tools for incident investigation and methods. Measurement and metrics is what we say, the KPIs, leading, lagging and all that. And the management review, so the continual improvement, a management review in terms of lessons learned. So audit, incident investigation, measurement, metrics and management review. Commitment to process safety. So how are we committed? So in committed is a compliance to standards. So we have our compliance to standards, so that is our commitment. And there is always the culture, process safety competency, stakeholder outreach and workforce involvement. Now the difference between our CCPS and the OSHA is primarily on this foundational block, wherein it talks about process safety competency, stakeholder process safety competency, culture, measurement metrics, and this is where ideally the difference is. So lessons learned, aim, audit, incident investigation, measurement metrics and management review. CCPS, commitment to process safety, culture, process safety competency, stakeholder outreach and workforce involvement. Yeah. Well, we've come so far, so good. We've seen about what the foundational blocks were, what these elements are, the ones that tally up to 20. If you don't mind, and this is a request to my listeners, if you all can from here try to recall as much you can, and then please write down on the comments, on the YouTube comments, on how many elements you were able to recall. So I would ask all of you all to pause, do the exercise and comment at the convenience, of course. Thank you. Yeah, so now after discussing on what the foundational blocks were and how you remember them, what each of these elements are, how to recall and remember, and I believe you all have done the exercise. I mean, you must have tried to do the exercise, and I hope it helps. So before towards now we are in the end of the video, and before I end, I always go through Simon Sinek's golden circle. And why do I do this? So my why is something called as edify to educate. Hitherto, to what we all know, process safety is quite simple in nature, and it can be simplified. So over my experience, I've moved along so many parallels in the world of HSE, and I'm trying to bring them all in a way which can be easily understood by a layman. So that is my why. My how of doing it is using YouTube as a platform, LinkedIn, writing blogs. I also, as time permits, do few calls, and all these are pro bono. I mean, I don't, and what I intend is for all my listeners to come use the YouTube, use the power of social media, and try to profess and try to doctrine and try to spread the know-how in a way which makes it easier for people. And in my video, there's always a section for an attitude for gratitude. Khalid Abdullah Rashid Al-Mamari, there is another video where I am paying my respects to Khalid for his support. But today, why I've used his name again is because my friend who's now in Oman has gone through an accident which is quite bad. We are all praying for him, and he's slowly recovering. So I would kindly request, and my request is not for like, share, subscribe, and all that for the video, which is not my intent, which is not my why. Why I need for all of you all is to at least have time to pay your prayers so that Khalid is back on his feet at the soonest. Thank you all for listening to the video, and I mean I can only improve on your feedback, so please pay your feedback, go crazy. I don't mind. All criticism is positive criticism. So thank you. Bye bye.